Oh, we're recording. All right.
Starting, yay! Jeri, thank you so much for doing this interview with me. I'm so very excited. So hi everyone, I am Beth Barany. I'm a creativity coach for writers and a science fiction fantasy novelist myself. I specialize in helping people get into their creative flow and write their novels. And I have a very special guest with me here today, Jeri Lawson, who has just come out with her first book, yay! A Business of Healing, yes, that I helped her create over the span of about a year, and we also have a longer history. She is a healing touch practitioner with a focus on healing touch, Reiki, and clarity breathwork. Do I have that right, Jeri?
Right.
Welcome.
Thank you, Beth.
Do you want to tell
go ahead.
Well, tell us about maybe how this book came to be and how it ties into the work you do. I know that's a big question.
So what I do, I'm a hands-on healer and a clarity breath worker. And my main modalities are healing touch and Reiki. And I've been in business for about 25 years. And so I had this collection of stories and experiences. And I kind of fell into mentoring other healers. And the stories that I told them and the experiences I've had appeared to really help them start their practice. Like they're way ahead of me, you know, like they would come with an issue and I'd go, oh yeah, blah, blah, blah. And then they would just and I'd go, it took me 7 years to figure that out, you know, so I thought I have to get these stories. I have to get these ideas. It's really, this book is a collection of ideas about things that took me a long time to figure out. And so I think they may be valuable to other people who are healers. And I think that we need more healers in the world. So that's why I wrote this book. So it's all documented and, helpful. So the process of writing this book was incredibly challenging. If it wasn't for Beth, if it wasn't for you, I just don't think it would be possible. And I started working with Beth 14, 15 years ago. I was in my practice. I was starting to write, little articles about my practice and what I was learning, especially at the time I was really focusing on working with people going through chemotherapy and radiation. And I had figured out a little protocol that seemed to be really helpful for my clients. And Beth, you helped me really write something intelligent that I could put out there to help other practitioners. And then you encouraged me to do a blog. And then I told you, I think I'd rather chew glass, but you encouraged me to do my blog, and I did it very consistently for 11 or 12 years. And from that blog and writing, and it takes a long time to put into words what I do. This is all from my experience, there's no facts here. This is just my experience. And, especially if you're a healer and you have your own business as a healer, you have to market, and healing is a mystery. Marketing a mystery is tricky, I don't really know what's going to happen, but it could be really beneficial. Give me all your money, it's hard. Sometimes you're just like, what? But my clients and what's happening in my sessions has been so helpful for them. And so many people can be, we're all healers. We all have this ability. And my vision is that we have healers more in hospitals and hospice and clinics and rehab, and we're healing ourselves. And that's the most important. All healing is self-healing. We're healing ourselves and we're healing our family and our friends. You don't have to have a business. It's really, energetic healing is just so accessible, and it makes life so much easier and so much more interesting. And it really helps us live deeper, and access our intuition and access this part of our brain, of our psyche, of our humanness, that we all can do it, and we can make our lives just more full and be more present in our lives.
Mhm.
So when I decided about a year ago to write all this stuff down, I had had a fall. I had fallen and broken a wrist and my shoulder. And so I couldn't work. So I started the book. And I met with you, Beth, every month. And I just remember, like, every time I wrote a chapter, I'd be like, I can't believe I'm going to publish this, these very personal experiences. And also, I was really, in this book, I'm kind of documenting my own process of trusting the energy more deeply. And that trust is a superpower. That's where the trust is, right? That's what's important. And just really documenting my expanding consciousness and how I sustain my healing practice, because healing will change you. Go, like, deep meditation will change you. It changes how your brain works. It changes how you show up in the world. It changes you. I'm sure it does things to your brain. And I just kind of wanted to document these important things and these important ideas so that it may help other people in their specific process. So, like, I titled the book A Business of Healing, not The Business of Healing. Like, this is how it goes. This is just what happened for me. And a lot in my practice, letting go of the spiritual seeker, discovering non-duality, how what I thought was going to happen in my sessions never happened, how I learned to just show up for the session and let go of my agendas, let go of everything keeping me from being fully present, which sometimes included my training, which sometimes included beliefs, old beliefs, sometimes in, like, what I should do, should not do, like, having thoughts. When I'm healing, I should be all serene and have no thoughts. Well, that's just not how it goes. Like, there's a lot of thoughts, there's a lot going on. And I would read about other healers and think, well, that's not happening for me. How do I adjust? How do I learn more? So yeah, that's what the book is about.
Yeah, so wonderful. And to hear you talk about it now, it's a thing now. People can order the book on Amazon. It's a physical thing. Can you hold it up again?
So yeah, this is the proof. I haven't even seen the proof of the print, but
Okay, that's
my friend Kristen Loken did the cover. It's like for one of her photographs. It's so
Yeah.
beautiful. This one's not for release or resale because
Right.
it was my first proof, but that's what it looks like.
It's wonderful, right? It's a thing now. It lives outside of you. You can talk about it with confidence. It's like this cohesive whole. And I remember at the beginning, you're like, I don't know what I'm doing. All I know is I have this, like, pressing on the back of my head. I have to get this book out. Yeah. And so what's so interesting is you really rode that wave. You rode that wave of not knowing, of just showing up, just like the way you show up for your clients, showing up for this message that wanted to come out of you that was so unknown. And I just really want to honor that process. And maybe you can talk about that, because I'm all about the creative process. I love it. I'm a novelist and have my own, science fiction, and we can talk about, science fiction.
That's the thing that's the thing that's so interesting is basically this book is pushing the reality paradigm of what's possible, of what's real, of what is happening. And I also see science fiction doing the same thing. It mentally opens us up to new possibilities. And creativity, no matter how torturous the process, which writing is a little torturous for me. I mean, it really, like I always say, I'm not a writer. I'm dyslexic and my spell check is haunted. Like, it's not my number one form of creativity.
Well, I'd have to say, as a writer too, it's not easy, but it's like this driving passion. I too feel like this pressure to become a good novelist. I mean, before I could write a story, I couldn't write a story. So there's also there's a lot of work at it. It isn't all like easy and play and, like you were saying, serene. There's a lot of bumps in the road.
I
So
remember spending 2 days on one paragraph, and I was like trying to figure out how to express this really complex idea in my own mind, you know. And so I did it, da, da, da. And then I had many people read the book. One was my breath worker, Sophia Arise, and she read the book, and she actually read that passage back to me. And I was like, oh my God, it was worth it. You know, like 2 days.
yeah,
And I think it was worth it. You know, like,
yeah,
she, you
yeah.
know, and I'm like, that sounds so good when she reads it. When I was writing it, it just sounded like a muddle, you know, like, oh my
And that just,
God.
you know, even though you don't identify as a writer, and I do identify as a writer, it's still really hard. I mean, I just turned in a book to my beta readers, and I remember being on several chapters for like 2 weeks. I was like reviewing the same chapter. It was for 2 weeks, trying to, it's not right. It's not right. I got to fix it. What's going on? Oh, I think it's this. I think it's that. So that happened to me repeatedly with this book. And just to show you, like, it's not just you, it's not just like writers too. We like chew on something for a long time, go, it's not right, it's not right. Does it need more salt? I don't know. What's wrong? So it's not just all smooth and sweet and angel singing, you know, that.
You know, I thought that because I didn't think of myself as a writer, I thought it would be so much easier because I wasn't so identified with being a writer. Wrong. You know, it was just like, oh my God. It's when you ever, like, these are some of my most intimate experiences that I don't talk to people about. Nobody really, you know, in day-to-day conversations, this stuff doesn't come up. And, you know, and it's exposing, it makes you vulnerable to put all this out, you know, and, it's really, it's an interesting process, but it does feng shui your brain, you know, like just being able to, like, the book is out, you know, and so, and I had my friend Holly Hussey in New York, who's a healer, and she sends me Reiki a lot, and she read it, and we talked about the ideas, and it was so gratifying. I go, well, you know, like like things that I think are just, you know, every day are, you know, so amazing to other people, and then other things that I think this is a great idea, and everybody's like, whatever, you know, like it's just so interesting how people respond to certain things and what people find interesting, and something, you know, it's a fascinating process, and the letting it go, and then letting other people, it's a conversation. It starts conversations. And in the healing world, most of the ideas in this book I've never been able to talk to people about. Just um like, especially like the idea of being bored in a healing session. That first time you feel bored, you feel unconnected, you feel like you really don't know what's going on. And the first time that happened to me, I was totally freaked out, you know. And then when one of my Heather Swallow came to me, and it happened to her, I recognized that was the first stage of letting go of my ego, of letting go of my agenda, of being able to just let the healing happen, just to show up, because all healing is self-healing. I show up, I hold the space for people to self-heal. And in that, you know, like, I've got my training, I've got my techniques, I've got the things I want to do. But once you show up, really the energy takes over, and whatever happens happens. And that boredom, is just another portal. It's a portal to a whole other level of healing. And I realized in watching Heather go through her process that it was really the doorway to a whole other level of holding space for people. And I could have eliminated like 7 years of torture if I would have been able to read my book. You know, like, I wrote this book so other people don't have to go through this, you know.
Yeah. And back to this notion of reality paradigm shifting and the edge being one idea I have is that the edge is being pushed out, like our sense of reality is being expanded, and we're finding all the edges. And I feel like your book speaks to those edges, to those kind of the unknown territory that we're being invited into. I don't know, does that resonate with you?
It totally does. You know, even my writing it down even was kind of solidified it a lot. You know, like, and my disclaimer in the book is that everything in this book can be irrelevant the day it's published. You know, like I could totally think another way tomorrow. I could have a healing that could just open me up to a whole new way of working, a process, I don't know, you know, but right now, this book felt really timely. Like I'm already a little bit distanced from it. I've already had experiences, especially during this COVID, where I'm doing all distance healing, space, time, the physical body, energy, healing, connecting with people is, you know, I'm a kinesthetic healer, and now I don't have a body in front of me, you know, like I have to really, I had to like, you know, a little tough there in the beginning, but now it's like these distance healings are so powerful, you know, and it's like, okay, I was really, it like the COVID has pushed my own boundaries of what is possible, and really every time I go into a session, I just have to open up to whatever boundary is going to be expanded. Every day something different opens up. So, you know, and also I have to say that, you know, being in business, it's like, here's the business and here's healing. I mean, these are like, it's like an oxymoron, you know, like it's, a business is so tangible and the finances and the this, and you're doing your QuickBooks or whatever. And then you're holding this space of unity consciousness where people can self-heal, pain releases, you know, and then, you know, and then you got to go shopping, you got to walk your dog, you know, it's really a book about kind of walking between worlds. And I thought about that walking between worlds a lot. I actually didn't use that in the book, but it just sounded kind of, you know, out there, but that's kind of what, and I think, you know, in a way, all creative acts do that when we really commit to our creativity. And, you know, ideas are a dime a dozen. You know, you can have, I got 1,000 ideas, I'll give them to you for free. It's the manifesting the damn idea that is just like exhausting, you know, like, okay, maybe it's not so exhausting, but I'm exaggerating, but, and it is rewarding. I'm so glad I wrote the book, but, you know, I mean, the idea to the manifestation is just this process of, I don't know what it is, but the idea is much more fun than the actual doing of it.
Yeah, I mean, I remember looking at your drafts and you would send me things and I would ask you questions and you would just say, I don't know, I got to let that sit and I got to move on to the next one. And there was a lot of, I don't know, there was a lot of like, I just got to write it, you know, and even getting feedback from me was, I could tell it was useful and you were telling me it was useful. And we would get together at the cafe over the cappuccinos and I could really feel the energy moving, but everything was kind of turbulent for a long while. And you kept moving forward. You're like, I'm sitting down every morning, I'm working on the book, I'm moving, okay, how do I handle this thing? Oh my God, it's a mess, right? There's a lot of mess.
Well, there's a lot of mess, and the idea they don't come, there's nothing linear about the way I access information. It's like, it's just kind of this concept, and then I got to find the words, and then I've got to, you know, and then so basically it's a collection of stories of certain things that happened. And then there was the sequencing of the stories, which was super stressful. I mean, I didn't want a chronological, here's my little life story. This is based on ideas, on experiences, on concepts that I have found now in my practice to be incredibly supportive. And so that's what I want to share, not so much, you know, my story. And you kept saying, put more of yourself in. And I'm like, no, it's not about me, you know? And then it's like, okay, so, but there's a little bit about me in my little process. But It's basically about the work. And I swear to God, this book it wrote itself. I don't know. I just tried not to block it.
Well, you scribed it. I mean, you sat down, you did the word after word.
And there's the vulnerability of even showing it to you, like here I'm working with a spirit guide. Here I'm feeling, my client is having a reunion with her deceased husband. It's just like things like this, when you write them down, there's this kind of um, reality to it that just seems almost kind of scary, like it's a commitment, some kind of commitment.
Yes. Oh my God, totally. I mean, it's on the page, it's in black and white. Of course you could erase it, delete it, rewrite it, but there it is for all to see, for all to potentially see. And now
Right.
to see definitively, there it is. People can go buy your book. And yeah, that is a scary thing. But how do you feel now? I mean, it's out of your hands, right? It's gaining a life of its own. People can read it. You're already getting reviews and having discussions. How does it feel now that it's out of you?
It feels really good that I'm done with it. I feel like as soon as I get all the little stuff published, as soon as it gets online, I think the discussions that I'm going to have with people, there's like many people I want to read it and that are interested in it, that other healers that I work with in my community, and to be able to present these ideas. These are not, this isn't about the joy of healing. This is about how I sustain my sanity, kind of in the process of being a healer, in like even being a healer, an energetic healer, an energetic practitioner in this day and age is still outside the paradigm, and the paradigm of reality for most people. And so I've learned how to kind of situate myself so that I don't seem so woo woo or airy fairy, or um and it's a delicate balance, between doing the work and being in the world, and how to communicate that. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And that kind of brings me to something that for people who are listening that don't really understand, what does that mean to be an energetic practitioner? How do you explain it to people who don't have a background in healing like I do? What do you say to them?
So what I do as a healer is, some people come in and they lie on my table. Here's my office. It's a really sturdy massage table. And usually they come in, and then I use my hands. I feel their energy. I check their chakras, and I create a space where they can totally relax. That's my goal, to hold a space where someone can totally relax and find peace. And when the body can relax, the body can self-heal. And the mind can self-heal. The emotions can self-heal. So I am holding a space for all possibilities to happen. And they happen in very different ways for different people. And it's always, always different. Some people feel other presence in the room. Some people, it's very physical. Sometimes it's more shamanic. Sometimes a lot releases. Sometimes there's an emotional release. Sometimes it's whatever they need, that space will give it to them. And I talk about trying to describe what this space is like and trying to figure out this space. And I read Adeshante's book, The Way of Liberation, and he talked about the fluid living intelligence. And I thought, that's perfect. That's what, it's like I'm holding this space of intelligence where the client may fall asleep or may get super energized, but it rebalances them, and in a very practical way. Like if people are going through chemo, people are going through radiation, people who have physical pain, people who have sinus issues, people who are going through a divorce. I mean, it just, and then you think you know, okay, this person is, you know, has an infected knee or something, and then you start the session and it's not about the knee, you know, like it's all this other stuff happens. And I'm like, what about the knee? What about the knee? I got to let that go and just let the energy do its thing, you know, and I've, it's been a very interesting journey.
Yeah, yeah. I want to bring up something that I don't think is in the book, but one of the titles that you were considering for a long time was a working class healer.
That was the working title, working class healer.
I mean, I still really love that title. And it really speaks to, here you are, you're a really grounded, practical person. You pay your taxes, you have an office, you know, you've been doing this for 25 years. And there's something very pedestrian about that, very like day to day, step after step. You walk your dog, you have a daily life. And then you go into this zone, go into this other space that does feel very, very different than the everyday activities that you do to maintain your business. Is there a transition for you? Is it easy? Do you kind of like walk through a doorway in your mind? You know, like how do you make that transition? Because that's also very similar to the way you have to transition into writing, or, you know, the way I have to move into my own creative space. How do you do that? How do you go between, like you were saying earlier, walking between two worlds? Or is it going from one world to another and back again? You know, what is that like for you?
Well, it's interesting. In the beginning, like it was really difficult. Like I felt like I was really what happened in my healing space was different than the rest of the world. And then over the years, it definitely has come together. So that transition for me is much easier. And also healing for me is like there's a physical thing that happens, um, like I have embodied the trust of the energy to the point where if I just have to relax and touch somebody and it's there, you know. So it's a very tangible thing for me. It's not always tangible, and even if it's not, I just want to say that for beginners, even if you don't feel anything, you still can really create benefits for somebody you're working with. But at this point, I feel it really strongly.
You feel it in your body.
Yeah. And so the transition now is much easier for me. And I have to say that's probably why I could even attempt to write the book, because early on it just, you know, healing was like, you know, and plus my own spiritual journey was, you know, I was kind of using the healing space as, oh, this is an altered state. I am closer to waking up. I am closer to heaven. I'm closer to God. I'm closer to whatever. But I realize now that the present moment is the closest thing we have to spirit, to healing, to complete connection with all that is, to oneness, to it's all right here right now as we're talking, you know, it's here. And so, and it was a difficult journey. And
And it's documented.
like I was always trying, you know, and this book kind of talks about my spiritual, how my spiritual seeking stopped outside of myself, and how that impacted my practice. And like I really was using healing as kind of a way to find my higher self and all of this. And I realized there is no higher self. There is this. It's all right here. The higher self is here, you know. And so most of the time I'm kind of in touch with it. But oops, you know, when I was just talking to some my phone company today, and I kind of lost it. But you know, like it's like, you know, basically I feel I'm not awake, but I feel that connection to that space, which is so to answer your question, that walking between worlds is a lot easier for me now, you know, and there are more like little glimpses in everyday life, like constantly. As before it was, I'm here and now I'm going to Walgreens, you know, like, like Walgreens was always the other world, you know, like, so does that answer your question? Can
Yeah,
you?
I think so. I mean, it sounds like the being connected right now to energy, whether you're giving a session, talking to me, or going to Walgreens, you're in the present. And so it, there's a difference between, say, sitting down and writing a book than, say, working with a client, but you're in the present regardless.
Right. I don't know though. I mean, don't you feel like when you're writing and it's flowing, I mean, that is the same state. That is the presence when it's really coming through and you're seeing it and you're feeling it and you're writing it.
Yeah.
You feel like it's the same thing
The same thing as what?
as being in it like a healer where I'm in the space.
I mean, I think it's like, I'm going to just compare two art forms, like, because I do colored pens and I used to do watercolors versus, say, working on fiction. It's two different mediums. So the parts of me that are expressing in fiction are different than the parts of me that are expressing in coloring, watercolors, and I'm using different skill sets, right? I'm using,
It's
and the
interesting.
flows feel different, but it's still the flow, but it's completely different. Like working on a book, oh my God, you got nouns and verbs and adjectives, you've got story arc, character arc, you've got keeping track of subplots, you've got how do I do a beginning, middle, and end? How do I create a cohesive whole? How do I keep the reader engaged? There's just so many things going on that I have to consider. And I don't consider them all at the same time. I consider them at different times. And it's like a layering effect that I have to trust, and then of course I get feedback and people will tell me where the gaps are. And I also have learned to feel and analyze where the gaps are. So it feels like I'm using my sensory system when I'm writing. I'm using my intellectual analytical system. I'm using my emotional system, and I'm also using sort of this larger than life system because I am creating another life. I'm creating lots of other lives. I mean, I have my point of view character, but this is a whole other world set in a future with different paradigms and realities and all kinds of things. So it's very three-dimensional or multi-dimensional, being a writer, being a novelist. And it's hard to actually articulate all the things that I'm doing to make it happen. And there is definitely a feeling of flow. And then there's also times where I'm like, it's not happening. I don't know what to say, or I don't know what's next, or I'm not sure about this subplot. And also at this point, it's kind of like, well, I attempted something. Did I do it? I don't know. Let me ask people who are invested in this project as well, my beta readers, to tell me, if I succeeded, if they were engaged, if they were captivated, if there was anything that was clunky that kicked them out of the story, because I'm essentially a novelist creates a trance. We're putting the reader into trance. That's the shorthand version of it. I realized that when I was studying NLP and we had a module on hypnotic languaging, and I realized, oh, stories in general are designed to put people into trance. and so that they get to live and inhabit that other world and be those people. It's so amazing. And so my job is I'm a little bit the engineer, I'm a little bit the puppeteer. I'm like maneuvering things in the background that are designed to create this experience. And it's fascinating as hell. I'm constantly learning new ways and understanding new ways to make that happen. Yeah. So every book is a stretch. Every book is that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, because my writing process was just like I'd be in the bathtub and I'd go, oh, that's how I want to say that. That has to be in the book. And then I'd have to I did have a pen close by. Eventually, I smartened up there. And then I had to take this information and then find the right words. And it was so hard, sometimes talking with you once a month, like, how do I describe this, or does this make sense, or so it was almost like two different mediums. Like the information would come through and then I'd have to verbalize it, like, let me just paint a picture, like, let me just, this is a static image. This would be so easy, but the writing was so, it's almost once removed. But then when I reread it, some parts of the book, I feel almost closer. So it's like I step back, then now I can read it and step in, and it's,
Yeah.
and then there, one of the hardest things was not re-editing. Like I just wanted to every time I read something, I wanted to re-edit it. I wanted to say it differently. It's like I could tell my perspective at every, change by the hour. So the material, I'd look at it and go, I should have used this word, or I should have made this more important in that passage about the concepts, because I was in a different space. And so it's like, I could tell there were like 100 Jerrys writing this one book, and I had to make it coherent, like, today I feel like this, today I'm more emotional, today I'm just like, this just the facts, like, and I was like, and sometimes I couldn't write if I was in the wrong personality, like, unless I was in that energy, like, I am just too cynical today to I think I'll just edit. Like, I'll just look for spelling. It's really, it was very interesting. I don't know how you do it.
Well, you just did it. I mean, it's true. Writing fiction is its own animal, and people can learn. I mean, there was a time where I didn't know how, and I just wrote nonfiction. I wrote about healing topics and interviewed authors and that kind of thing. I was in the psychic healing world, and I realized my true love was writing fiction. And so I basically had to acquire all the tools. I mean, I literally had no toolkit. I had an empty toolbox. Well, I had enough to know that I had to sit down and write. And that was writing begat writing. That I knew that from early childhood. My great grandmother was a writer. My mother passed on this wisdom from her. But other than that, I only knew that a story had a beginning, middle, and an end. And that's like practically meaningless if you want to create something, this other world. So I really had to learn all those tools, and I'm still learning. I'm always learning, I think.
Well, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
How does meeting with me, you learned about the healing, hands-on healing process, energetic healing. I mean, are you going to have a healer in your next book? How is that information?
Well, I have actually a series of books in the works, mostly in my mind, but I have some outline notes about women who gain powers. And I hadn't really thought of them as healing powers, but that's essentially what they are. And I've written some stories that my heroes, like my Henrietta the Dragon Slayer series, my character has magic. Several characters in it have magic. And for me, magic has all kinds of abilities, including healing abilities. So I would say that these kinds of abilities have always shown up in my work in one form or another. Since I'm working on science fiction, I haven't really included that aspect, but I make mention of energy and ways of being, and I haven't really included that. That would be an interesting thing to incorporate in some way. Yeah, it hasn't really been a topic. I'm writing mysteries, so yeah, I haven't really included that. But thank you for that ping, because that reminder, it's something that'd be nice to incorporate more consciously. I feel like the work I do as a science fiction fantasy novelist, the unknown is always part of the story in some way, whether it's through magic in my fantasy worlds that I create, or in the science fiction. I'm expanding science in my stories as if we understand more than we do today. We're working on the quantum scale, or working on the virtual particles, or whatever. Like we've expanded our notion of what is, and we use it like every day aspect of life, So to me, in my own investigation of science and our understanding of reality, it feels like science fiction is catching up to what energetic healers and Sufis and people in the what we used to call esoteric arts, you know, what they understood intuitively and experienced through their body, where science is finally slowly has been catching up to that, to be able to, what if we could measure an aura? What if we could have devices that could see how energy passes from one human to another?
We actually do have that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and there's science experiments that show what's called spooky action at a distance, where if one electron spins over here, another electron will spin at the same time, and they could be separated by a galaxy or a solar system or on either sides of the planet. Well, that feels like distance healing to me, you know,
right.
Recognition of how everything is actually connected. And science isn't there yet, but it's getting there. I mean, I'm watching the cutting edge all the time, reading. That's part of my playtime, is to read every day headlines about what's basic laboratory science and new understandings of electricity and the quantum field, and how physics is kind of shifting, is expanding, is exploring, and that shifts who we think we are. That shifts what reality is.
And what our possibilities are, you know, like our medical culture, like we're both kind of doing the same thing, definitely, like expanding our mainstream culture, expanding the possibilities, like getting healing into hospitals, like science fiction, like we are all connected. There's so many things that can happen. There's so many ideas, and where science fiction expands the possibilities of your mind. Healing, hopefully this book may make healing more accessible to other people, to institutions, to someone who's recovering from surgery. You know, that's what it's all about, the mainstream reality paradigm. You know, create artists and writers and healers. We're expanding that, and that's what's so exciting, so that we can live with all. I mean, there's so much more. There's so much. I mean, what's here, if we're fully present for what's here, we'll find so much more.
That's wonderful. I just love that. Well, Jeri, we could go on and on. We have so many.
We could go on and on. let's have coffee.
Yeah, let's
go meet for coffee again. A little lattes, and we're ready to go.
That's right. And then we'll have to have another one of these conversations. I really look forward to sharing your message with everyone, sharing, you know, a business of healing with everyone, because I so believe in, I love your stance. I love your approach, very down to earth, very honest, and also opening. Like me just reading the book as an editor, helping you put the book together, it felt, every time I read it, I felt like I was getting a healing. So even for people who aren't wanting to open up their own healing practices, but are just curious about what is it like to bring healing into your life, I think this is a really good book for that, and really introduce them to that topic.
And I just want to say that this book would never be here if it wasn't for you. That being able to come to you with just these nerve-wracking confessions, I felt like I was confessing, you know, like, well, this is the first time I dealt with a spirit guide. I was, you know, like, the fact that I was uncomfortable with it was embarrassing. The fact that it happened was just like, you know, like, it's just so like, okay, this was my experience, to be able to have, you know, a place that you could, because you were my first, you reflected back first. You'd say, hey, no, I like this. And I'd be, really, this, you think this is interesting? You know, and I'd be like, okay, you know, and that was so important. And if it wasn't for your being able to hold space for me to like just regurgitate this up, this book would not happen if it wasn't for Beth, that's for sure. So I want to just thank you so much. You know, and it takes a lot to hold, these are not normal ideas, you know, this is going to cause some controversy probably, you know, and just to be able to have that space to let it nurture and let it come together was just such a gift. So thank you so much.
Oh, you're so welcome. It was such an honor. And I just love that. I love the juiciness of the process, and to be able to sit with you, you know, is just such a pleasure. So I really want to thank you, Jeri. And if anybody's interested to learn more about Jeri's work, your website, tell us your website.
Jeri Lawson, healingtouch.com.
Great, Jeri, wonderful. And the book, A Business of Healing, is available on Amazon and pretty soon on other online retailers. So thank you again, everyone, for joining us for this discussion on creativity. And
my first interview ever.
Wow, you did great. And if you guys have any questions or any comments about our discussion, please put it in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. You know, we're here to support the creative process, to support healing, to support awareness. And we're so glad that you could join us today. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.